Hey, welcome to Fix It for Josh's sake. Today I'm going to work on a 1964 Bobcat. It is the M444. This is a on-in 16 horsepower motor in here. And the project I have going today is in the drive mechanism over here on the side. The bearing that actually sits on the shaft and pushes between the clutch plates, that bearing went out. And I have collected an entire jar of bearing parts with a magnet in the oil bath, and now I'm going to put everything back together. I just pressed the new bearing in. I'm going to show you how we're going to fix this for Josh's sake. Man, these old Bobcats sure are cool. They had a lot of pretty neat technology in here, even though it's kind of straightforward with a lot of gears and chains and clutch plates and things. But this is what it looks like in here. And where I'm working today is on this shaft and on this shaft. Here is the thrust bearing back plate right there. Here's another thrust bearing back plate right there. I thought that's what went out, and I did find parts of the cage for that, but all of them were good. So somebody replaced the thrust bearing, but all the parts fell down into that oil down there and left a lot of debris in my oil filter. So I'm going to put this back together step by step, more for me, but you get to watch along as I fix it. I'm about to put the clutch plate, backing plate on here, but before I do that, I kind of want to show how unique this is, or how cool this works. I got my control lever up here. This is the right hand one, but the way it works is there's a worm gear in here behind this shaft, and there's a worm gear back here behind this shaft, and when this mechanism spins like that, it presses pressure on the clutch plate right there, or pressure on the clutch plate right there. And then the way this chain comes through, because this one's underneath and this one's on top, depending on which clutch plate's getting the pressure determines if we're driving the skid steer forward or if we're driving the skid steer backwards, due to the pressure that is applied by each one of these clutch plates. When I'm talking about a clutch plate, I'm talking about this, and there's the gear that this chain drives on. And then we've got a surface right here that has to have a big, thick washer on it for the back of the thrust bearing to ride against. We wouldn't want it to actually ride on the metal of this plate, but we put that washer on there. Ooh. And then you take your thrust bearing and you put it on here too. And then that rides like that. And this whole system, now, the other side of that thrust bearing plate is already in here. And then this goes in like this, slides on the shaft, and then I have to pull this chain up onto that gear. And now this rides nice and firmly. The thrust bearing is sitting against the back of that shaft, against the worm gears inside of here that are going to be controlled by this lever up here. Next, we got our actual clutch plate material, and that sits right here and creates that friction that we need with the oil bath to allow this to either slip or grab. Earlier in this video, I said I replaced a bearing. This is one of the bearings that I replaced right there. There's two of them, one on each side, and there is a gap in the middle because there's actually a hole in this drive shaft that lines up with that gap. And the way this system is designed is oil is blasting out of those holes in both those shafts, which is keeping the clutch plates and the chain properly lubricated. And so we take that shaft, or this plate, just like this, we slide it on the shaft. Now that presses right up against that clutch plate right there. And now we got to go get our backing plate and our next thrust bearing and our front backing plate before we screw the nut on to hold this all together on this drive shaft. So here's that backing plate I was talking about. Slides on there like that. Here's the next bearing. That thrust bearing goes on like that. Now here's the big nut that goes on there. It's got threads on it, and it actually gets pressed on here. Not too difficult. And there's another thrust bearing backing plate in there, just to point out. And when you stick this on like this, it actually has to stay flat at the top here, because when this plate gets bolted into here, there's a ridge right there that has to hold this in place so it doesn't spin. Because if that spun, we would probably start to have wear and tear. But the plate that we're going to bolt on here holds that in place. So that's all ready to go. Then I'm going to put this one on, and then once I have this one on, we can put the chain on that comes around here and drives on these big gears there. So just like the other one there, we've got the backing plate for the clutch. The thrust bearing washer is already in there. So then we put the other thrust bearing washer on the face of this. We put the thrust bearing on there like that. And we got to pull this chain down and slide this on like that all the way to the back. Make sure the teeth are in on both sprockets. We don't want them to fall off in there. Alright, that's like that. Now I'm going to go get the actual clutch material that goes right there. Just like before, we're going to put the clutch material on there. And then here's the front of the plate. And that goes like this, slides on there. Alright, and then that clutch would press against that one. Now I got to go get my second thrust bearing. Here's the backing plate of that. Goes on. Here's the bearing. Goes on. And then here's that big nut, and it's already got the plate in there. So we can slide that on. And that sits just like that. Alright. Those are in there good. The chain's on there, just like we need it to be. Looking good. In order to make sure none of this comes loose, we've got castle nuts and cotter pins, and they slide on there, thread on pretty easily. I mean, this is really hard steel, so I haven't noticed that any of them are getting marred or wrecked at all. I would imagine it'd be way too hard for this metal to start mushrooming out or anything like that. So now I'm kind of paying attention to the friction level there. I mean, I tighten that a little bit. I don't want any play. I want that to be pretty snug. And the thrust bearings are going to do a good job there. I kind of just watch where my castle nut lines up here with the hole that I need it to land into, so I can put the cotter pin in. Now that we got the castle nuts, the cotter pins, everything in place here, we need to tension this chain. So we get ourselves a strong arm or any 1/2 inch driver, and we put it in. Well, let's get over here so you can see it. There's a square in there in that plate. So you put your 1/2 inch driver in there, and then you rotate it. Look at this chain. Isn't that cool? Yeah, the chain literally, by doing that, and if my memory serves me correctly, we had about 1/4 inch of play, so we got to bring this down pretty far. Now, provided the big bolt right here, that is a 7/8 inch, and the little bolt right here, that is a 3/4 inch. So just make sure both those are loose as you're working on tensioning your chain, because you don't want to be working against those. So with those having a little slack in them, we can tension this chain up, and then once the tension's all there, we'll tighten these 2 bolts. It's a little bit of a jiggle and wiggle kind of thing, but I have my 6 inch 1/2 inch extension on my 18 inch strong arm, and I'm pressing down on this circle, and now I have them so that I can tighten the big 7/8 inch bolt. I'll give that one a good snug. Again, we'll check, yep, about 1/4 inch of play. And then we're going to do the same on this one. Check it again. About 1/4 inch of play. There we go. That's pretty good. All right, I'm happy with that. Now that I got this chain nice and tight, you can see the tension on it. Maybe you can see it down in there too. Not much play. It's about 1/4 inch. and it seems to play more here than it does here. So back here is a little more play, but that's because the distance is further from the bottom of this big drive gear to the back of this clutch plate, whereas the distance here is only about 12 inches. So about a quarter inch of play is what we're looking at there. Now we're going to move on to the next thing. I'm going to bring you in here. I'm in here, look real close. This is the drive sprocket, and this is what is being driven by the motor. This is the clutches drive this drive sprocket right here. So the next thing I need to do, now that I have that chain in place, the castle nuts on, everything is in place, now we're going to run the big chain that comes around here, across the top of this gear here. It comes down, goes around this drive sprocket, and then this is the tensioner right here. There's a couple of bolts back here on the outside. So once I get the chain on and the master link in place, then I'll be pushing this over from far away. You can probably see it better. I'll be pushing that tensioner gear in and tightening it into place so that the big chain that's going all around here is nice and tight as well. This chain is a bit of a custom size. Here's the stock end of the chain. When you come to this one, you notice we've got a couple of half step links. So this distance around these gears and to the drive are not just a stock chain link. They have to have a couple little step links in there. But I'm going to try to put this on the best I can here. Now when I say the best I can, I mean it's kind of clumsy sometimes putting a chain onto these, but what I'm looking for here is I really want to be able to play with the master link right about down in here. That's where I want it to be. The end of it is down in there, so I am trying to get everything else to line up so that my master link can be put together down in the bottom here. Alright, come around here, over top the other big gear. And the reason why I'm being intentional about that is because when we come across this drive gear down here, this one doesn't turn. So where we got it is where we're going to get it. So that'll be like that. And now I'm going to put the link in. There's the link. It's going to come from the inside and push out. So coming from the inside. Try not to drop it because otherwise I'm digging in the oil pan down below. Pull it as tight as I can get it. It really is pretty snug, even though there is a tensioner back there. If we can get it lined up. You can't see this on camera. Okay, there we go. So the link is in. Now we just got to put the face of the link in, and then the safety clip that holds it there. So there's the first part, and that presses on like this. Okay, nice and tight. And next, let's get that lock link on. There's the link. It's got the little slot at the top of it there. And alright, I don't pretend to be a pro at this. Let's see if we can get it on here. I'm going to put get it on the back part first. And I got a screwdriver here. Let's see if we can get it to slide over top of the second one, which it just did. And then I just got to spread it out to get it to come over top of both of them together. And that, my friend, is easier said than done. But the good news is, if it's hard to get it off, if it's hard to get it on, it's probably going to be real cumbersome to get off too, which that's the whole point, right? We don't ever want this to come apart unless we're going at it mechanically like this. So I'm going to futz around with it for another minute, get it clipped on there. I know, very underwhelming. And there it is. Okay, that link is on. Now I'm just going to go back here and tighten that tensioner gear into place. For this last little bit, I just push this tensioner gear forward. The chain should have, again, about a 1/4 inch of play. I don't know if you can see that, but it's pretty tight. It's a pretty snug chain tension that they had on there when I took it apart. This is a 9/16 inch bolt here that holds the tensioner arm in place. And you can't use a deep well because the tire is coming too close, so you got to go get your shallow socket or an open end box end. But I'm just going to tighten this down. Like I said, it's a 9/16. Once both of those are nice and snug, that chain can't go anywhere. We know that we got this back together the way we want. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there we go. Probably can't see any of the play. There's a little plate right down there. Well, that's as far as I can take you in this video today, because I'm going to go down to the hardware store. I'm going to get a couple magnets that I'm going to drop down in the bottom of this oil pan, because there is still a little bit of debris in there from that bearing falling apart, and I just want to have that just staying in the bottom of this oil bath here. And so right now this is all back together. I'm going to come back, drop that magnet in, and then I'll put the plate on that goes along here and bolts in. The final part is there is a couple of caps that screw on here. Now just remember, you can't take this plate off until you take these caps off. So always start out by taking these caps off, then take off all the bolts or nuts around the perimeter, and this comes off real easy. Alright, thanks for watching. Fix It for Josh's sake. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Give me a subscribe. Share it with a friend. These old Bobcats are really fun to work on. Maybe somebody else would enjoy the process as well. Have a great day.